Hey everyone, just a real basic one today. This is a key fob remote from a car alarm, and it needs some new buttons. I just noticed the rubber's kind of jammed up in there. I think they just recently had it open. Anyway, we need some new buttons. Yeah, pretty straightforward really. It's also got a hole in one of the buttons there. They wear out over time. We'll see what we can do about filling that. I've got an idea that may work. Because you can't buy this one anymore, it's a bit old. You can't buy new rubber for it either. So it's a bit of a shame. Oh, that's why it didn't fit. It's upside down. Okay. Yeah, she's pretty munched. It's interesting. I've noticed in a lot of remotes, and I'm not sure why, but they all seem to end up with this funny green stuff, like it's oozing out of the button. And I don't know that these buttons are specifically maybe made with I'll just take the battery out. Hang on, it's got two of them. I don't know if they're specifically made with some kind of I don't know, sealant in them or something. But yeah, they always, it's always green and quite sticky. It's almost like wax. It's really weird. Could just be moisture and skin cells and all sorts. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to put 3 new buttons on it because those are pretty rotten, even though the one at the top is obviously used the most. That's why there's a hole in the rubber. Now these boards are a very thin PCB. You don't want to get a lot of heat into them, so I won't be using the hot air gun on this, even though it's like the easiest option. We'll just be nice and gentle because I'm going to put it in a vise, and when you clamp it, and if you clamp it and then heat it, and you've clamped it a bit tight, it can actually cause the board to bend under the clamping pressure as the board softens from the heat. So yeah, you don't need a heat gun for everything. It's a surface mount. See if we can scrub some of that off. Just gonna get oh, okay. That's actually lifted off the board anyway, so we'll just go that side, and when it's hot, swipe my tweezer tip underneath it, and it just wipes the solder away. Basically helps to separate it. There we go. Now the replacement buttons I got from RS Components, that's their product code at the top and the manufacturer code underneath. They seem to be quite common button in a lot of remotes. They're metal center. I did actually get some ones that were a plastic center, those ones there, and I found out that they're like a fraction of a millimeter shorter, so that the button doesn't stick out quite as far, and that's kind of important because when you push the rubber squishes down a little bit before it actually has enough tension in there to push the button. You can see the round pad in the center of the button there that pushes on the switch, and that compresses a bit. And if the switch is just that fraction shorter, you've got to press it just that fraction more, and it does feel wrong. And I personally don't like it. Some people may not pick up on it, but you do notice it if you've put those in. So yeah, grab the other ones with the metal centers. Going to put a little bit of flux down, just the tiniest amount. And that'll just help it flow around the pins. A little bit cold in here this morning. Had our first decent frost for the season. We're still in autumn really, but heading into winter. Take. There we go. Do you want to see closer? Now I'll clean up with a bit of ISO. And these buttons inside have actually got a little bit of adhesive tape, I believe, over the little diaphragm. Maybe I could take one apart and show you how they work. But I like to avoid flooding the top of the button with ISO, because if it gets down inside the switch, it'll soften up the glues on that, and we don't want to risk shortening the life of the switch or having any sticky substance become a problem not long after repair, making the contacts all sticky so it doesn't work when you push it. So just not too liberal with your application there. A little bit of stray solder. Now we'll just have a quick look at some of the other joints and see how we're faring. Not too bad. Make sure that nothing else is getting a bit crusty in there. There's nothing worse than handing something back to someone and then it's got another issue that wasn't really immediately obvious. Just checking. So checking the legs of the main IC there, and the ends of the capacitors and stuff. Just see if there's anything that may be an obvious crack or broken joint. I had one, the IC had a few more legs on it than that one, but it looked absolutely fine. until you looked at it that way and you could see the legs had lifted off the board. Of course, the main oscillator, I think that's probably what would fail if you were to drop it too many times. I think it's in pretty good shape. If it was quite loose going in, which I had another one of these that was, you can just push down, take the batteries out and push down on these two contacts here, gently, but enough to bend them down a little bit until they hold enough pressure against the top of the battery, and that's how you can snug that up. Just also making sure that the solder points here where the top connector goes on, making sure that they're okay. That's another spot that could break over time and abuse. So now the batteries are in, we'll test for a green light. There we go. Number 2, number 3, good as new. Let's see what we can do about filling the hole in the buttons there. We'll give it a clean up first with some bit of a scrub and some alcohol. That looks like a good starting point. Now I'm doing this all under the microscope, so it's a bit zoomed, but what I have here is a standard tube of JB Well RTV silicon sealant and adhesive, because we want it to be sticky. The sealant on its own will peel off quite easily. It's normally designed to go between two surfaces. So this is your standard 85 grams, like a large tube of toothpaste, and that's what we're going to be using. So what I did on the last one, which process needs some improvement, we'll put some tape over the front side, and I'll use some Kapton tape. That'll give us a smooth surface to push the silicon into, that will make like a template for the top of the button, so when the silicon comes through it can't go anywhere and it'll end up being nice and flat. Get our silicon, which the lovely lid on the tube just decided to crack on me, so it's probably never going to seal again, and it'll go off and harden inside the tube if I don't use it. Typical. Get a lovely blob. You want to push it into the hole and sort of work it around so that it gets right up to the edge of the hole on the other side of the tape. A little bit too much, I think, but it's fine. And finish with a little bit of a bump in the middle, because that's what they have there. You got that circle in the middle that sits up a bit higher, so we just want to have something similar. It'll probably settle a little bit, but once it hardens, hopefully it will assist. So if we take a look at the other side, and we can see how it's pushed out. Oh, can you see that? It's a bit tricky to see. Oh. A bit tricky to see with the glare and all, but it's filled out, packed out to the edges, so it's up against the tape and it's left a nice sort of level surface having filled the hole. Maybe you all want to see what's inside one of these little buttons, and maybe we can see where all the green blood comes from. This one still clicks and it probably works just fine, but in its outer physical condition it's pretty gross, and I probably wouldn't leave it in there. So to get into one of these, we just have to bend those little tags over. Come back down into view. Here we go. So I bent these side tags out the way, and then the top section will slide off. Like that. That green stuff must come from something else, but it's just so common in remotes. And I don't think it's the solder mask coming off the PCB, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing inside these as new. So there's our lid, here's our button or actuator, I guess. Just has a bit of a nub on the other side. Then we've got this sheet stuck all the way around. That covers the switch contact itself, or the diaphragm. So I guess that gives it some amount of waterproofing and moisture resistance, because you know how hot and steamy and humid it gets in your pockets. As it is, that's kind of gooey on the underside. Like, it's pretty wet looking. Then we've got the metal disc, which in its relaxed state is a dome that sort of points towards us, and when you push it in the middle, it flexes, makes contact underneath. There we go. So there's the underside. You can see the center. So the center of the dome contacts this center pad, and the outside edge of the dome just rests on these contacts, and these go to one of the legs, and then the center pin goes to the other leg, which is common across the switch. Yeah, and when you pop it down, it joins the two together. Pretty basic. And I have had success taking them apart like that and cleaning all this crud out, cleaning the contacts, and then put it back together, just bend these tags back over, and yeah, they work just fine. Well, one day later, almost, when did I do this? Anyway, it's been setting up overnight. It's kind of squidgy. Let's see if we can remove the tape. So it does look like it's trying to pull the rubber out. So I am going to need to gently slice it off. And I might just put a weight on the back of that rubber something heavy to stop it moving around while I work through this. Ooh. The last one I did not do under a microscope. Well, one needs to try these things, don't they? Fill in the hole. Try and keep it waterproof, or at least have something to push on. And there we have, all filled in, flush with the top of the button there, and with the bump on the back side to push the new switch. Well, if you've ever tried something like that and you've got a better solution to give a better finish, let me know. I'm quite keen to learn new ways of doing things, but that's a first for me, really, so just thought I'd give it a shot. And now we can reassemble and if we give that a push, we get our green light. As with the other ones, that because they don't need as much of a push. This one does squash down a bit. These ones are firmer, but it's better than nothing, and you can't buy a new one. Thanks for watching.